I'm definitely the angriest person on this panel, I just want to say that. But it's interesting to hear you talking about, and I think it's so great, everything that you've described, what you're up to, and listening about, the idea that you don't want to, have roles that are maids and gardeners and all that. It's interesting because I don't even think that we experiencing having roles that are in the 20th or 21st century. We're pretty much anchored in the 19th century, generally speaking, as like a backdrop to a white man who's trying to figure out his life, including this past year's Oscar winner and countless others. Like we're just not, I mean, if we just be really straight about it, Native people do not have a seat at the table of the national narrative. It's a level of invisibility that I find deplorable, and I think I'm losing patience on some level. This is an occupied state. This country is an occupied state. I also don't see Latino people as not indigenous people. I personally see Latino people as indigenous people, but because of the nature of the last 400 years and the way in which colonization rolled out and Christianization, I think that Christianity is one of the most powerful tools of cultural genocide. And so, I've spent the last couple of years in particular putting a lot of time and study and my own research into this. And I'm really, I'm not an academic, I'm a filmmaker, a mother, I'm a grandmother. I'm coming at it from a different place, but I've traveled throughout Latin America for the last 2 years delivering a lecture called The Decolonization of Consciousness. And I speak Spanish fluently because I live in Los Angeles, and my kids are Latino, which they're actually Tarahumara, but whatever, Latino. And as I traveled all throughout, South America, Central America, Mexico, and United States and Canada, and I started, really understanding more and more about the way in which the last 400 years have rolled out in terms of genocide, slavery, and industrialization, and now this kind of multinational corporate exploit, which is, we just got the bill, which is climate change. I began to sort of do the numbers, and Latin America is essentially 80 to 85% indigenous by blood. That 10 to 15% immigrating minority, that's the group that controls the economies and the governments in Latin American countries. But the reality is that the majority of people in Latin America are indigenous by blood. But the nature of, again, genocide and cultural genocide, the identity has been broken. And so when you put the numbers together, there's about 950 million people in the Americas, and just under 600 million people in the Americas are indigenous. So indigenous people are the majority population of the Americas, contrary to what dominant culture would tell you. And if you start looking at the world, and this industry that we're all a part of, which generates 80% of the world's media content, the world is essentially about 4.5 billion people who are Asian, about 1.1 billion people who are African, 1.3 billion people who are indigenous, and 600 million Europeans. So white people are the absolute minority on this planet in the Americas, but control everything. So on one level, and I can say this because my father's family immigrated from Ireland essentially, so I feel like I have the right to talk about white supremacy in a way that is perhaps less confrontational. I have ancestors that immigrated here, so I have a responsibility to reconciliation and some of the things that are most important in these times. But I also, on my mother's side of my family, immigrate from people who originate from this land. So in that sense, I'm like 30,000 years old, and so and I'm sorry to be so blunt about all of this, but I honestly am at a point where it's like, if we don't start talking about this shit, it's such an illusion, it's just an absolute illusion. And when Trump for me is like, well, yeah, he descends from the people that formed this country. Like, I don't know how to understand how anyone is surprised. Those are the descendants of the people who formed this country. And so when we look at, in the entertainment business, it's like, it's just such an inauthentic representation of the world and of our country. It's like, there's a gross irresponsibility in terms of how, the entertainment industry is a manifestation of white supremacy. And it has perpetuated itself quite well.
Man, I'm glad you got the microphone. That's a boom.